The hangar smelled of jet fuel and cold metal, the kind of quiet industrial stillness that settled over private airfields long after the last commercial flights had faded into the evening sky. Daniel Reyes wiped his hands on a shop rag, stepping back from the sleek private jet he had spent the last 6 hours repairing, a stubborn hydraulic issue that had grounded the aircraft since early that morning. He had worked as an aircraft maintenance technician at Meridian Executive Airfield for nearly 4 years now, ever since leaving military service and needing steady, dependable work that let him be home most evenings for his daughter, Lily. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills, and Daniel took quiet pride in doing it carefully and well. That afternoon, the jet belonged to Vivian Hale, CEO of a large logistics conglomerate, scheduled to fly out for an urgent overseas meeting later that evening. Daniel had diagnosed the hydraulic fault quickly, sourced the necessary part from another hangar across the field, and completed the repair well within the tight window she had demanded. When he presented the invoice at the front office, however, Vivian barely glanced at it before waving it away. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice sharp with impatience. $400 for a repair that took a few hours. I'm not paying this. Daniel remained calm, though a familiar tightness settled in his chest. "That's the standard rate for emergency same-day repairs, ma'am. It includes the part, labor, and the priority service fee for rushing the job." "I don't care what it includes," Vivian snapped. "I have a flight to catch. Have your supervisor adjust the bill, or I'll take my business elsewhere." Daniel considered arguing further, but exhaustion, not defeat, kept him quiet. "I'll note the dispute," he said simply. "The aircraft is cleared for departure whenever you're ready." Vivian turned sharply and walked toward the jet, already dialing someone on her phone, dismissing the entire exchange without a second thought. Word of the disagreement, however, spread quickly through the small airfield community. By the time Vivian's pilot, a seasoned veteran named Frank Delgado, arrived to prepare for departure, he had already heard what happened from another mechanic in the break room. Frank walked over to Daniel, arms crossed. "She really refused to pay you? After you rushed that repair on a Friday evening?" Daniel shrugged tiredly. Wouldn't be the first time someone assumed the bill was negotiable just because they didn't like the total. Frank shook his head slowly, clearly troubled. "You've been solid with every aircraft you've touched here, Daniel. I trust your work completely. But if she's willing to cut corners on paying for a repair, I start wondering what else she might expect me to cut corners on." He walked toward the jet, spoke quietly with Vivian for a few minutes, then returned to the hangar office, his expression firm. "I'm not flying tonight," Frank announced to the small group of mechanics and staff gathered nearby. "Not until that invoice is settled properly. I won't operate an aircraft where basic maintenance costs are treated like something optional." Vivian, overhearing this from a short distance away, stormed toward the office, clearly irritated. "Excuse me, you work for me, Frank. I expect that jet in the air within the hour." "With respect, ma'am," Frank said evenly, "I work for the safety of everyone on that aircraft, yourself included. If the company you're flying with won't stand behind its own maintenance bills, I'm not comfortable trusting the rest of the arrangement either." Vivian turned toward the small crowd of hangar staff, expecting support, but found only quiet, steady resistance. Another pilot nearby, overhearing the exchange, simply shook his head. "Same here. I'm not taking that one up either, not under these circumstances." For the first time that evening, Vivian's confident exterior faltered slightly. She glanced toward Daniel, still standing near the jet, calm and unbothered despite the growing tension. "This is absurd," she said, though her voice had lost some of its earlier sharpness. "It's $400. It's not about the amount," Daniel said quietly, stepping forward. "It's about whether the work gets respected. I didn't rush that repair for extra money. I rushed it because you needed to fly tonight, and I wanted to make sure you got there safely." Vivian studied him for a long moment, something shifting behind her earlier frustration. "You could have taken your time. Made me wait longer, given the way I spoke to you." "That's not how I operate," Daniel said simply. "My work reflects who I am, not how someone treats me." The quiet honesty in his response seemed to land somewhere deeper than she expected. Vivian exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "All right," she said finally. "Send the invoice to my assistant. It'll be paid tonight, in full." Daniel nodded. "I appreciate that." As the situation settled, Frank returned to prepare the aircraft, satisfied that the matter had been resolved properly. Before boarding, however, Vivian lingered near Daniel for a moment. I run a company that manages thousands of contracts every year, she admitted quietly. Sometimes it's easy to forget that behind every invoice is someone's actual work, someone's actual time. She paused. That's not an excuse, just an honest observation. Most people forget that, Daniel said. Doesn't make it right, but it happens. Vivian nodded slowly, something like respect settling into her expression. For what it's worth, the way your team responded tonight, refusing to fly until things were made right, that says a lot about the kind of operation you're running here. I'll be sending future business your way. I appreciate that too, Daniel said, allowing himself a small, tired smile. As the jet finally taxied out toward the runway, engines humming steadily into the darkening evening sky, Daniel gathered his tools and made his way toward the parking lot, ready to head home. Lily was waiting at the kitchen table when he arrived, homework spread out in front of her, looking up eagerly the moment he walked through the door. How was work, Daddy? Daniel considered the question for a moment, thinking about the long day, the tense standoff, and the quiet resolution that had followed. It was a good reminder, he said finally, setting his tool bag down by the door, that doing honest work, even when it's not appreciated right away, usually finds its way to being respected eventually. Lily tilted her head curiously. Did something happen? Daniel smiled softly, sitting down across from her. Just someone finally understanding the value of a job done right, he said. Now, tell me about your homework. I hear multiplication tables are causing some trouble. Lily groaned dramatically, and Daniel laughed, the tension of the day slowly melting away into the familiar comfort of an ordinary evening at home.